The galactic peace station hung like a silent moon between two massive empires. One side belonged to the Eskari, proud and sharp-scaled warriors known for their strength and honor. The other side belonged to the Belkan, tall, pale beings with minds built for strategy and manipulation. Both sides had been enemies for over 50 years. They'd fought 3 major wars, each one worse than the last. Now, once again, they stood on the edge of another war that could destroy entire star systems. The Peace Summit was their last chance. Ambassadors, soldiers, and leaders from across the galaxy arrived at the station. Cameras floated through the air, recording every moment. Journalists from dozens of species whispered predictions. Most believed the talks would fail. No one had hope for peace. And then the diplomat arrived. Her name was Vierz's. She was from the neutral world of Solaris. Respected, calm, and clever, she had managed to stop smaller wars in the past. But even she knew this task was different. This time, she didn't come alone. A tall human walked beside her, dressed in a plain black coat, his face unreadable. His name was Ethan. His eyes scanned every corner, every movement. His steps were quiet but strong. Many stared at him with confusion, some with curiosity, and others with amusement. "Why bring a human bodyguard?" one Eskari soldier whispered. "They're from a weak planet." "Maybe she thinks his muscles will scare us," another laughed. But Vierz's didn't answer the whispers. She didn't need to. Ethan stayed behind her, always watching, always silent. They entered the main hall of the station. The room was wide, with a high ceiling and glowing walls that changed color based on the speaker's voice. A long oval table sat in the center. On one side sat the Eskari leaders, wearing armor with blades folded behind their backs. On the other side sat the Belkan, dressed in long robes with blinking data crystals. Took her seat at the center of the table. Ethan stood behind her, arms folded. The first few minutes of the meeting were polite. Greetings were exchanged, and false smiles were shared. But it didn't last. "We know the Belkan are hiding warships near the border," the Eskari general growled. "Lies," the Belkan minister replied, his long fingers tapping the table. "It's you who move fleets in secret." The room's color shifted from calm blue to tense orange. Veress raised her hand. "Let us not begin with blame. We are here to listen." "To understand. What does your bodyguard understand?" the Belkan asked with a smirk. "He hasn't said a word." Ethan didn't react. He remained still, staring ahead. "Humans are new to the galaxy," another voice added. "They should watch and learn, not stand like statues." The Eskari general leaned forward, his golden eyes sharp. That one looked slow, soft, flesh without fang. There was laughter around the table. Versa stayed calm. She looked at Ethan, then back at the group. "He's not here to impress you. He is here to protect peace." "From who?" Someone chuckled. "Us. No," she replied, her voice like ice. "From what might happen if peace fails?" The room grew quiet for a moment. Then, as if nothing had happened, the leaders returned to their shouting. Insults filled the air. Words like traitor, coward, and thief were thrown across the table. The walls glowed red now. Veress stood up. "This session is over for today. We will meet again tomorrow." As she walked out, Ethan followed behind her. They returned to their private quarters deep within the station. Cameras watched them pass, and so did eyes filled with suspicion. Inside her room, Vierza sat by the window and looked out at the stars. "They don't want peace," she said softly. Ethan didn't speak. She glanced at him. "They fear each other, but they fear you more." "Good," Ethan finally said. Verse smiled. "Do you think war is coming?" He nodded once. "They've already chosen it. They just haven't said it out loud yet." Beerus closed her eyes. "Then we must be ready." Later that night, while the station slept, 3 figures moved through. The shadows. They didn't leave footprints, and their weapons made no sound. They wore cloaks that bent the light. No alarms rang. No cameras saw them. They reached Veress's door, but before they could open it, everything changed. One figure was grabbed and slammed into the wall without a sound. Another spun to react, but something hit his neck fast, sharp, and cold. The third turned to run, but was met with a shadow that moved like smoke and struck like lightning. Within seconds, it was over. The hallway was quiet again. No blood, no screams. Just silence. Ethan stood over the three attackers. His breathing was steady. He touched his ear. "It's handled," he said. Security arrived minutes later, confused. They found no signs of a fight. Only 3 cloaked intruders lying unconscious, and their weapons melted into useless metal. When the news spread, the station buzzed with whispers again. Some were shocked, some were afraid. But all now knew one thing. The human bodyguard was not a joke. He was a warning, and he had just been very polite until now. The second day began with tight smiles and heavy silence. The main hall of the peace station was cold. Every leader sat a little straighter than yesterday. They didn't laugh this time. They didn't mock. The story of the silent human bodyguard had spread fast. 3 elite attackers had failed, and now fear lived in the corners of their eyes. Viewership walked into the hall with the same grace as before. Behind her, Ethan followed. He looked calm, hands behind his back, eyes still. But something about him felt heavier, like the air around him had changed. No one dared speak a word against him now. "Shall we begin?" Viewership asked, her voice clear. The Askari general gave a stiff nod. The Belkan minister adjusted his long sleeves, then answered, "Yes. Let's get it over with." They began to speak again, but this time the words were slower, more careful. Still, the deep hate between them was impossible to hide. "Your fleets moved past the Burnlight border 3 cycles ago," the Askari leader said. Placing a file on the table, the Belkan leader opened the file and sneered, "This is not proof. These images could be fake or planted." "You lie," the Askari said sharply. The room turned orange again. Vers raised a hand. "We are not here to throw blame. We are here to avoid destruction. We didn't start this," the Belkan snapped. Their mining colonies broke the agreement. They stole from Belkan territory. The Askari general's scales twitched. "Your borders shift every month. If we followed your lines, we would be left with nothing." The tension grew again. Eyes narrowed. Chairs shifted. 2 guards at the back placed hands near their weapons. Ethan didn't move, but his eyes flicked across the room once. Both guards stopped moving. The room fell quiet. "This is pointless," the Belkan minister muttered. "They come here to bark, not to talk." "I came here to listen," Viewership replied. "But you both treat peace like a toy." The Askari general slammed a fist on the table. "Enough of this game. We are warriors, not children." "Yes," the Belkan said, with a thin smile. "Oh. And warriors bleed." Viewership stood up slowly. "If this is how you wish to end it, then I cannot stop you." "You cannot," the Askari replied. "But he can," Viewership said. Turning slightly to Ethan, the room turned still again. "What are you suggesting?" the Belkan minister asked. Burst. Look directly at them. "If war begins, it will not be like your old wars. Not anymore. Earth has changed the game." "He's one man," the Askari scoffed, though his voice trembled just slightly. "One man," Viewership said softly, "who hasn't even tried yet." Silence. The meeting ended early again. No agreement was signed. No treaty was discussed. Empires returned to their ships with clenched fists and worried hearts. Later that day, something unexpected happened. A secret message was sent from the Belkan flagship to the Askari battlecruiser. It wasn't official. It didn't use government lines. It was hidden, meant only for high command. The message was simple. "Prepare for immediate strike. They've brought a weapon." The Askari answered with their own. "If they fire, we fire. Aim for their capital world." Within hours, fleets on both sides started to shift. Quiet commands were given. Systems powered up. Missiles were loaded. Some soldiers whispered prayers. Others checked their weapons 3 times. Vers received the first warning from a quiet source deep inside the Belkan Council. She read the message, then turned to Ethan. "They're planning something." "Yes," he replied. "Are we ready?" Ethan nodded. She looked at him closely. "You're very calm, because it won't take long." Vieirsis didn't ask what. He meant she had learned not to. Long ago, she had seen him stop a battle between rival gangs without lifting a finger. Another time, she saw him walk through a riot untouched while others followed him in silence. Earth's human program had created something unique, something even they didn't fully understand. And now it was hers to command. A knock came at the door. A station guard stood outside, pale and sweating. "Ambassador," he said quickly, "we've detected strange power levels from both fleets. Something is happening." Vieirsis didn't react. She glanced at Ethan. He gave a small nod and followed her out. The hallway lights flickered as they walked toward the command chamber. Officers rushed around with datapads and comms. Alarms blinked quietly in red dot in the command room. Giant screens showed both fleets. Hundreds of ships. Dozens of weapons locked into place. They're seconds away from firing. Someone whispered. The station commander turned to Vieirsis. "We're not built to survive a direct hit. If they fight here," Vieirsis raised her hand. "They won't." The commander stared at her. "How do you know?" She didn't answer. Ethan stepped forward. He tapped a small disc on his wrist. Nothing happened. Not right away. Then a light pulse spread out from the station like a wave. It touched every ship in orbit. Alarms screamed across both fleets. Weapon. Systems shut down one by one. Engines froze. Shields dropped. Bridges filled with confused shouting. The commanders on both sides screamed orders, but nothing worked. Every system had been locked out in the main command room. The station screen now showed a message in white letters. "You have been disabled. This is your only warning. Earth watches." The room fell silent. Ethan said one word. "Done." Vieirsis smiled slightly. The galaxy didn't know it yet, but the war had already ended, and it took less than 3 minutes to stop it. The silence after the lockdown felt louder than the shouting before it. Both the Ascari and Belkan fleets floated dead in space. Officers tried to fix their systems, but nothing worked. Lights blinked, screens flashed red, and control panels didn't respond. It was like the ships were frozen in time. On the Belkan flagship, Minister Thalos slammed his fist on the armrest of his command chair. "Why can't we fire? Why are our systems locked?" "We don't know," one of the engineers answered in a panicked voice. "It wasn't from our ship. Some signal came from the station, and now everything is shut down. Weapons, engines, comms, everything." Its face darkened. "Reverse it. We're trying. It's not letting us." Meanwhile, on the Ascari battleship, General Karkin was facing the same problem. "What do you mean we've lost all power?" Karkin growled. His officer looked at the glowing screen. In front of him, single sentence repeated again and again. "Earth watches. Do not test us again." Karkin's claws tapped the side of his helmet. Was this the human? No one answered him in the center of the peace station. In the observation chamber, Vieirsis stood calmly beside a large window that showed the fleets outside. Behind her, Ethan stood as still as always. A station officer came running in. "Ambassador." "Vieirsis," he said breathlessly. "Our scans confirm it. Both fleets are locked. All weapons are disabled. Nothing can move." "Good," Vieirsis said softly. "No one needs to die today." The officer swallowed nervously. "May I ask, did your bodyguard do?" Vieirsis turned her head slightly. "Something small, something quiet, but something final." The officer looked at Ethan with wide eyes, then left the room quickly. Vieirsis looked out the window again. "Strange, isn't it? They brought thousands of soldiers, and I brought one." Ethan didn't say anything. He rarely did. The leaders from both sides were soon summoned back to the meeting hall. No one spoke on the walk there. The Ascari looked serious. The Belkan looked pale. Neither group was laughing anymore as they entered the hall. Saw the same human standing beside Vieirsis, calm, silent, dangerous. Vieirsis welcomed them with a small nod. "Shall we continue?" The Ascari general stayed standing. "What? Was that what happened to our fleets?" "You tried to start a war," Vieirsis replied. "And Earth stopped it, with a signal," the Belkan minister asked, voice shaking slightly. "With a message," Ethan said. Finally breaking his silence, the room froze at the sound of his voice. It was calm, flat, not loud, but it filled the entire chamber. "You were about to kill each other," Ethan continued. And maybe you would have killed us too. Maybe millions would have died. But we don't believe in long wars. Not anymore. Why? The Askari general asked slowly. You're not part of this. Because we've seen what war does. Ethan answered. And we've learned to end it before it begins. The Belkan leader narrowed his eyes. What are you saying? The Earth will control every battle in the galaxy? No, Veers has said. Earth doesn't want to rule. It just wants peace. But if peace is broken, humans don't wait. They act. The room went quiet again. The Askari general finally sat down. You should have warned us. We did, Veers has said. Laughed. Ethan leaned forward slightly. The meeting continued, but the tone had changed completely. Voices were lower. No one raised their hand in anger. The insults had stopped. Instead of threats, they began discussing borders, trade, and resources. For the first time in years, real ideas were shared. Behind it all, the humans stood without. Moving, no weapons in hand, no armor, just presence. It was enough. Outside the station, the locked fleet stayed frozen. They weren't released yet. It was a reminder. A quiet warning that the power now belonged to those who could end a war. In silence, when the talks ended for the day, both sides looked tired but not angry. Something had shifted. It's not just in the room, but in their minds. As the Askari general left the hall, he stopped near Ethan. You don't speak much, General said. I don't need to, Ethan replied. The general looked him up and down. You're not what we expected from Earth. No one is, Ethan said. The general gave a slow nod and left. Vess walked with Ethan back to their quarters. You did well? She said. I did what was needed, he replied. She looked at him carefully. Does it ever bother you? What? Being. Feared. Ethan looked out the window. The stars were bright tonight. Not if it keeps people alive, he said. Vierases nodded. Then maybe fear is the beginning of peace. The third day of talks began differently. The room was quiet, but not because of tension. It was the kind of silence that came from respect or maybe fear. The leaders from both the Askari and the Belkan empires entered the hall slowly. There, eyes scanning the room before sitting down. Verse was already there. She didn't speak at first. She simply looked around and waited. Ethan stood behind her, same as before. Arms behind his back, face calm, no movement, no expression. But his presence filled the room. No one made jokes now. No one whispered insults. Not a single word was spoken about humans or their planet. Both sides had seen enough. Verse leaned forward slightly. Today we begin again. No threats, no lies, only truth. The Askari general nodded. I agree, the Belkan minister did. The same as do I. Just like that, the real talks began. For hours they spoke of trade routes, shared systems, and disputed zones. Instead of pointing fingers, they reviewed data. Instead of raising voices, they made compromises. And every time the talks began to rise in emotion, someone would glance at Ethan and things would calm down again. Outside the station, the fleets still floated frozen. The weapons were still locked. Neither side had tried to fire again. Deep. Inside their ships, engineers were studying the lockout system, trying to understand it. But none of them could crack it. It was far beyond their technology. The only message that remained on their screens was, Earth watches. Peace is the only option. Back in the meeting hall, progress continued. At one point, the Askari general placed a small crystal on the table. It glowed red. This holds our proposal for shared mining in the Valen system, he said. The Belkan minister placed a blue crystal beside it, and this holds our answer. They connected the two crystals. The room lights shifted from orange to soft green. It meant agreement, Verse smiled faintly. This is what peace looks like. The Belkan leader looked at her, but peace only came because of fear. Because of your bodyguard. No, Veersis said. Peace came because you both finally listened. Fear just helped you quiet down. Enough to hear. There was a pause. The Askari general looked at Ethan. What are you really? Not just a bodyguard. No normal man can do what you did. Ethan didn't answer. Versus did. He is human. That's enough. The room fell quiet again. Across the galaxy, news of what happened at the peace station had started to spread. Smaller worlds and neutral. Planets began holding emergency meetings. Some feared Earth's growing power. Others wanted to learn from it. And many simply wanted to know one thing: how could one human stop two empires? A famous news channel ran the headline: "Not a soldier, not a fleet, just a man. What is Earth hiding?" Another article called him the Shadow Guardian and guessed that Ethan was part of some hidden military program. One theory even said Earth had built a new kind of machine that lived inside human skin. Back on the station, Ursus and Ethan returned to their quarters after another full day of talks. "Today was good," Ursus said, removing her diplomatic robe. "They're learning." Ethan sat quietly by the window. "They're watching." "You mean the other planets?" Nodded. "Some are afraid, some are angry, some want what we have." Veers sighed. "They'll all come with questions." Soon, Ethan's voice was steady. "They'll come with more than questions." Veers turned to face him. "Can we handle them all?" "We don't have to handle them," Ethan said. "We just have to remind them." "Remind them of what?" Ethan looked at her. "That peace is not weakness, and war has changed." The next day, a surprise visitor arrived at the station. An observer from the Galactic Union N, old council made of dozens of smaller appendices, came to watch the final part of the negotiations. They had stayed silent for many years, never getting involved in the big empire conflicts. But now, they were curious. The observer was a tall creature with silver eyes and skin like smooth stone. It introduced itself as Ornal. "We've heard strange things," Ornal said, its voice soft. "We heard that war was stopped not by armies, but by a human." Veers welcomed it with grace. He heard correctly. Ornal turned to Ethan. "And you? What are you to them?" Ethan replied. "I'm a reminder of what? That humans don't fight for fun," he said. "But if you force us, we end it fast." Ornal blinked slowly. "Many will not." "Like that? They don't have to like it," Ethan said. "They only have to believe it." The observers stayed silent after that. Later in the meeting hall, a final agreement was made. The borders were redrawn fairly. Trade would resume. And both sides agreed to remove secret fleets from the Burn Light Zone. When the last signature was added, the room turned green once more. "It's done," Veers said. "Peace is signed," the Azkari general confirmed. The Belkan minister gave a small bow. "We came ready for war, and left with peace. Strange world." Veers stood. "Then let it be a new beginning." Ethan tapped his wrist device again. Far above, both fleets lit up for a second. And then slowly, control was returned. Systems reactivated but stayed offline. The locks were gone. The ships could move again, but none of them did. They knew better now. After the peace treaty was signed, the galaxy did not return to normal. In fact, everything changed. The Azkari and Belkan fleets slowly returned to their own systems, quiet and careful. Their ships, once filled with pride and fire, now moved. Like ghosts. Every soldier on board knew the truth. They had been stopped by one human. Not a fleet. Not a planet. Just one man. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some said the human was a machine in disguise. Others claimed he was a weapon created from ancient tech buried deep within Earth. One whisper said he had no heart. Only wires and steel. But no one truly knew. And that made it worse. In small bars across neutral planets, spacers told the story with wide eyes. He didn't even raise his voice, one would say. Just pressed. A button, and every weapon in space died. What if Earth has hundreds of him? Another would ask. What if they're already watching us? Governments began to panic behind closed doors. On the planet Velen, the High Council met in secret. They had once considered Earth a young world rich in spirit but weak in power. Now they weren't sure. What if Earth becomes the new center of power? Asked one of the counselors. Then we must send ambassadors, said another. Before. It's too late. On a distant asteroid colony, a military scientist viewed the footage again and again slow motion of Ethan walking through the peace station. standing silent, disabling fleets with one press. We have to learn how they did. The scientist said. But their tech teams couldn't understand the signal used. It didn't match anything in the galactic database. It was smooth, fast, and clean. No trace, no source, just power. Some feared, some admired, some wanted to copy, but all paid attention now. Meanwhile, at the peace station, Viers's and Ethan continued to stay a few more days. The station was quiet now, with only a few diplomats and staff remaining. Verse stood in the observation room, looking at the stars. "Did you ever think it would happen like this?" she asked. Ethan stood behind her. "Not this fast. It changed everything." "They changed themselves," Ethan said. "I just gave them a reason." Viers's turned to him. "I've been asked to speak before the Galactic Union next week. They want to hear about the treaty." Ethan nodded. "They also want to meet you," she added. Ethan didn't react. "What for?" "To understand, to ask questions." "They won't like the answers." Viers's sighed. "I know." The next morning, a small ship arrived at the station, carried a team of envoys from a world called Naru, a minor planet, that had remained neutral during all past wars. The lead envoy was named Dara. She had green skin, soft blue eyes, and spoke with a slow, thoughtful voice. She met Verses in the garden chamber. "We watched what happened," Dara said. "We wanted to meet the human who ended a war." Verses gestured toward Ethan, who stood under a tree nearby, watching a small bird-like drone fly in circles. "That's him," Verses said. Dara stared. "He's not what I expected." "That's the point," Verses replied. Dara walked over to Ethan, careful and slow. "May I ask you something?" she said gently. Ethan nodded once. "What are you, human?" "No," she said, "I mean, how can you do what you do?" Ethan looked at her, not with anger, but something deeper tiredness, because we had to learn the hard way. He said, "What do you mean?" "Earth didn't always have peace," he answered. "We fought too many wars. We broke too many things. We learned that waiting is dangerous, so now we don't wait." Dara nodded slowly. "And what if others try to challenge you?" "Then we remind them," he said, "just like we reminded the empires." She didn't ask anything more. Back on her ship, Dara sent a report to her leaders. "Earth is not what we thought. They are not cruel, but they are not soft. The human is not a weapon. He is a warning. We should listen." On another planet. Across the stars, an old warlord read a report on the peace station. He leaned back in his seat, rubbed his chin, and whispered, "Earth ended a war in 3 minutes. Let's hope they don't start one." He turned to his guards. "Send them a gift. Something respectful." In the following days, Earth began receiving thousands of messages, some formal, some curious, some filled with fear, others with offers of friendship. The leaders of Earth, who had kept their strength quiet for so long, finally spoke. "Asterisk, asterisk, we don't want control," their message said. "But if peace is threatened again, we will respond quickly and completely." That message was saved in every language across the galaxy, and the name of the human, who stood behind the diplomat Ethan, was remembered, not as a hero, not as a villain, but as something in between, something powerful, something that made the galaxy think twice. A week had passed since the treaty. The peace station now floated in silence, calm and still. Most of the ships had gone. The delegates had returned to their worlds, but their minds were not the same. Something had changed deep inside them, something quiet but powerful. They had seen a war stopped in 3 minutes, and the memory stayed with them, inside. The station's high hall Viers's stood before the Galactic Union's largest screen. Faces from hundreds of species stared back at her. They had come from every corner of the galaxy not just to hear about the peace treaty, but to ask about the human. "I didn't bring a weapon," Viers's said clearly. "I brought a guardian, not one of destruction, but of balance. For peace, and because of that, peace was achieved." Many council members nodded. A few looked unsure. What elder spoke? "But what if humans are too strong now? What if they decide to rule?" Vierases didn't flinch. Then it's up to us to never give them a reason. At the back of the chamber, Ethan stood quietly. No armor, no gun.
Ow.
Just his calm presence. An ambassador from the Duran species asked, "Him, human, do you plan to control us with fear?" Ethan looked up. His voice was calm. "No, we don't need to control anyone." "Then why show such power?" Someone else shouted, "Because you are going to destroy yourselves," he said simply, "and you wouldn't listen to words. So we showed you silence." The room became quiet. Veres stepped forward again. Earth has no interest in ruling. But they will not stand back while worlds burn. They've made that clear. The Galactic Union ended their session with one final message. Earth is not to be feared, but not to be ignored. After the summit, Vierzes and Ethan walked together. Through the garden corridor of the station, birds chirped. Soft lights glowed under the trees. Peace was in the air now, not just the result of a treaty, but something deeper. It had been earned. Verse looked at Ethan. "You never told me where you learned to do all this." Ethan didn't answer right away. Then in a soft voice, he said, "I lost people in old wars. I made a promise that if I could stop even one more war, I would." Vierzes nodded. He kept that promise. "For now," he said, they stopped by a fountain. Water flowed gently over smooth stone. Nearby, a young diplomat from a faraway planet watched them. When she saw Ethan, she stood quietly, unsure if she should speak. Vierzes smiled and waved her. "Over. You're the human," the young diplomat said in awe. "My people speak of you like a storm." Ethan looked at her. "Storms come and go. Peace stays longer. Can I ask you something?" He nodded. "Are all humans like you?" Gave a small smile. "No. Some are smarter, some are braver, some are kinder. I'm just the one who showed up this time." The young diplomat laughed softly, then bowed her head. "Thank you." She left. Vierzes looked at Ethan again. "You're becoming a legend." "Legends fade," he said. "But this peace won't." A few days later, the last transport left the station. Vierzes and Ethan were aboard it, heading back to a neutral planet where Earth had its embassy. The stars outside the window shined like never before as they sat in silence. A small screen lit up in front of them. A message from Earth. Veres opened it. "Diplomatic success confirmed. Other nations now recognize human presence. Remain available for future missions." She smiled. "They want us to do it again." Ethan looked at her. "I hope we don't have to, but if we do, then we'll be ready." When the ship landed, a crowd waited outside. Not for Vierzes, but for Ethan. Children held signs. Adults stood in silence. They weren't cheering, they weren't shouting. They were watching, not with fear, not with hate, but with deep, deep respect. One child stepped forward and asked, "Sir, did you really stop a war?" Ethan bent down to the boy's level and said, "Gently, no. I reminded them that they didn't want one." The child nodded and ran back to his parents. Vierzes walked beside Ethan through the crowd. Everywhere they passed, heads turned. Conversations stopped. "You didn't speak much," she said. "I didn't need to. That's what makes it powerful." As they reached the embassy gates, a reporter stepped forward. "Do you have any final words for the galaxy?" she asked. Ethan looked directly at the camera and said, "Earth is not your enemy. We don't want to fight. But if you come with fire, we'll answer with silence. The kind that ends wars." Then he turned and walked inside. The galaxy watched. That final message again and again. And from that day forward, when peace talks began anywhere, someone always asked, "Is a human coming?" Not with fear, but with hope.